Good morning, Harvest Clear Lake. Ben and Leah Sheridan here.
Hey everyone.
We decided today we would step on the other side of the camera and just kind of share a little devotion with you guys. Um, give you a little background on us and some things we've gone through and what helped us get through that. So this is my wife, Leah Sheridan.
Hey guys. We just kind of wanted to touch on a marriage devotion because, or really any relationship you could apply this to. But we know a lot of people are struggling right now, and that definitely puts a strain on marriage and any relationship, really, just by the financial struggles or kids being home more, husbands being home more, or just the uncertainty that can be scary. So we know it puts a strain on relationships. So we just want to encourage you in your marriage and hopefully give you some tips and to strengthen it.
Yeah. So a little bit about us. We met in high school. We started dating when we were about 17 and 18. I think I had just turned 18. She was 17. And we got married a few years later, and we have been married since 2011, so 9 years this August. We have 3 beautiful children together, Mason, Charlotte, and Oliver. And the 9 years of marriage have been fantastic, but it's not always pretty. I think anyone who's married knows that marriage can be the most beautiful thing, and at times not so pretty. So we've definitely had our share of both. About 2.5 years ago was when it all came to a peak, and our marriage was almost over. I mean, we had divorce papers already started to be filled out, and it was only through God's grace and the softening and transformation of our hearts, both individually, because it takes both, that we are still here today, and that we have 3 beautiful children, because one of them was born after this, and he's a walking testament of what God can do through your marriage when you allow him to.
Yeah. Like Ben was saying, we almost ended our marriage, and if we kind of go back even a little further, we both came from backgrounds and we had issues that we had brought into our marriage, and we got married so young. I don't even think we really knew how to be married or the role of a husband and wife, especially a godly husband and wife. We didn't always, have the best examples to follow. And we, of course, were young, and we just kind of did what we wanted. So our foundation was never strong to begin with, which is just so important. And we brought these issues into our marriage thinking, oh, we're together now, we're married, and that will solve everything. And I think as many of you in a relationship know, that's never going to fix your problems. Yeah. Another person is never going to fix your problems. And not only that, but they're going to just amplify. So I just want to read a verse really quick that really helped me when I was stuck in the darkness after when our marriage was going to be over, and it was the worst time in my life, honestly. And I was in a complete dark valley, and he couldn't pull me out. I couldn't pull myself out. My life had been just flipped upside down, and Psalms 34:5 says, "Those who look to him are radiant, and their faces shall never be ashamed." So to me, I feel like I was looking to the wrong source of the light. He's not the light. I'm not even the light. But when I looked to Jesus, when I looked to God, I was able to reflect his light and to get out of that darkness, and without shame. And I think it's because now we can share our testimony and we can hopefully help other couples. One of our goals we've talked about is to do family ministry, or we aspire to be maybe marriage pastors in the future. So if God can use the worst and most painful parts of our life to help others, I think that will bless us so much.
And that's just an example of God being able to make beauty from ashes. I think maybe the power of that verse gets lost in the popularity of it, but let me tell you, our marriage right now is beauty from ashes. And like that verse says, those who look to Him are radiant. Don't look to your spouse or your children or your parents or your friends or anyone else for the things that only God can do for you.
We took that opportunity when our marriage was crumbled and it was just broken. It was honestly so broken, to rebuild it and to make God the center of it and to be the strongest marriage we could have. And honestly, it's never been stronger ever than now. So we just hope we could share some things with you to help you in your marriage, hopefully, or any relationship, like I said. And one of the major flaws we had was communication. We are both not great communicators, just naturally. We're not like huge talkers, and we don't easily come to each other to communicate. So that is something we've really had to work on and be vulnerable with each other.
So if you look at God's design for marriage, communication plays a huge role in that. In Mark 10:7-9, it says, "For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate." And when you talk about two becoming one flesh, we also talk about the church being united as one body. And even more so, a spouse is united, or a marriage is united as one body. And you can't work against your own body. Marriage is a picture of Christ and the church. Christ and the church can't be working against each other. We need to be in constant communication with each other. When you have miscommunications within your body, if your brain is not communicating with your arm right, or your fingers right to move your hands, that's a sign of an illness in that body. So those are things that need to be addressed if you're having issues communicating with your spouse. It's only going to lead to problems.
Yeah, and I know for me, I definitely struggled with criticizing and being overly just unkind with my words. And Jerry, she touched on it with her devotion, but I also wanted to read Proverbs 18:21, and that says, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruits." So that is just, that's so powerful for me, because God's literally telling us you can speak life over someone, or you can speak death over someone. And I think as wives, we know those buttons we could push in our husbands that really tear them down, and it really has a lasting effect. I know it did on Ben's self-esteem, and it makes them feel disrespected and unloved, which is definitely not what God calls us to be as a wife. So
and I mean, Proverbs is full of verses that have to do with communication. I urge every one of you and myself to read Proverbs every day. There's 31 of them, 31 chapters.
Perfect.
Read one a day, and every month you're reading the entire book of Proverbs. And there's so much wisdom in there that you could read it for the rest of your life and get something new every time. Proverbs 25:11 says, "A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in a setting of silver," meaning it's pleasing. It's a beautiful thing when you are able to speak a word fitly. You can be saying all the right things or have the right intent behind it, but if you're saying it wrong, or if you're saying the right things with the wrong intention, it's not going to be received. It's going to be rejected. And there's an author out there, Dr. Gary Chapman. He wrote a book about the 5 love languages. And in the rebuilding of our marriage, that was something that was important to us, is knowing your spouse's love language. Yeah. So there are 5 love languages. They're words of affirmation, receiving gifts, quality time, physical touch, and acts of service. Now, that's not to say that love is only received in these ways, but it's the main way that you see love. Mm-hmm. And it's important to know your spouse's love language and to communicate with them in this way. It's like if your spouse spoke a different language, if you speak only English and your wife speaks only Spanish, it's going to be hard to communicate if you both just talk in a language that you understand. So it's important to stretch yourself into showing love in a way that they will understand and take it. And that is when you can speak a word that is fitly spoken. That's
so true. I mean, when we took the time to go through and take the little test, it's really easy online to see what our love language was, and everyone's different. So his is words of affirmation and physical touch, which a lot of men are, and mine are more like acts of service and gifts and just like thoughtfulness, really. Yeah. But once I was able to see, okay, this is how my husband receives love, then I could work harder. And it might feel unnatural at first, because we usually like to give love like we like to get love, but really we have to love like they need to be loved. Yeah. So it takes time, and I think it takes selflessness and unconditional love and serving, like really serve your spouse. And I think it really does start with communicating, because if we didn't communicate and say, hey, I need more of this, or could you do this more, then we would never know. We can't read each other's minds, and a lot of times we like to think, hey, I'm thinking this, why aren't you getting it yet? Yeah, how many times in marriage does that happen, where there may be something your spouse does that is really bothering you, and you never say anything about it, and they keep doing it because they don't know that it's bothering you, and you just, over time, you get more and more and more frustrated about it, until the communication that does happen is an argument instead of negative, instead of just maybe a simple thing. Hey, I don't like when you put the cups in the cupboard facing up or something. I don't know. So if you really think of your spouse as a gift from God, I mean, Adam, God saw he was lonely and that he needed someone. He needed a mate, and he gave him Eve, a beautiful wife to be with, and to have children with, and to live life together, and a true gift. And he's going to use this gift, this relationship, to not only bless you, but also to refine you. I mean, it's your spouse. When you're reading the Bible, where it says love your neighbor as yourself, your spouse is your closest neighbor. Yeah. They are the first person you're in contact with all the time, that we can put what God's telling us into use. We're going to put that into use, and we're going to use our spouse to do that. So don't neglect that relationship as just a solid one when it's a gift. Yeah. It's always a true gift, and we should really treat it like that every single day. And it's your first ministry. Your family is your first ministry. If you are serving in ministry, you could be traveling the world speaking to 1 million people at a time. But if you're not ministering to your wife, to your husband, you've failed. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to communicating in your marriage, you have to kind of have some ground rules set. You have to have a safe space within your marriage that you can be vulnerable with each other. Yeah. When you mess up, you need to be able to go to your spouse and talk to them about it, and understand that there's going to be grace and there's going to be forgiveness. Yeah. And that's important, because if your spouse messes up and they come to you and they tell you about it,
and you lash out on them and it turns into a big, huge thing, that's going to close down all lines of communication going forward. And then you're not going to be in any better spot. And then also be open to constructive criticism from your spouse about areas that you can improve in. I mean, you guys are there to help each other out, to make each other look better, to minister to each other. And you can't do that without constructive criticism. None of us are perfect, except my wife. But none of the rest of us are perfect. And our spouses need to be able to come to us and be like, hey, you know what? This is something I think that you could be doing better. Coming to you in love, not in the middle of an argument. Well, you know what? You could be doing this better. You know, that's
not throwing it in your face, but we've asked each other at times, you know, how can I be a better wife right now, or how can he be a better husband? And we don't take offense to, you know, what our spouse says we can work on. I think sometimes we're not honest enough, and that's what gets you in trouble, is not being honest enough. Even if it's not something we want to hear, that it may hurt, we still like to keep it open and safe communication. But also keeping Ephesians 5:32 in mind, where it says, be kind to one another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another as God in Christ forgave you. So, like he said, just freely giving grace, forgiveness, and kindly and humbly coming to your spouse and just treating them with the same love and respect and forgiveness that Christ gives us every single day.
Yeah.
I think in closing, I'd just like to encourage couples that no marriage is perfect, and we all have our issues and our struggles, and if you could do one thing for your marriage, it would just be to have a community around you. Like, we couldn't have gotten the perspective that we did in the beginning when we were struggling unless we had reached out to our pastors, to our siblings, to our friends, and for them to come in and to encourage us and give us tips and to tell us, you know, you're not alone. You know, we've struggled like this and we'll love you through it. And if you can just reach out to a community, even to us, we would love to talk to you if it's something private. But we just want to see your marriage succeeding and flourishing, and that God to just be the center of that.
Yeah. No matter what failures you have, the enemy wants you to feel like you're alone in that. And the truth is, you're not. There's someone in this church, someone in leadership probably, that has gone through the same things that you're going through right now. And they can help you with that. You don't have to be alone. You don't have to feel shame. Reach out, get in touch with your pastors, with your leaders. And
we want to challenge you. Post a picture of you and your spouse and just say a kind thing about them. One kind thing I'd love to say about my husband is he always tells me how beautiful I am. I mean, I'm talking multiple times a day, and I'm a shy person, so it makes me a little bashful, but deep down I love that he is so loving.
I mean, she's gorgeous though. One kind thing about my wife is that she is a hard worker. She is so selfless. She puts me and my children above her own wants and desires in every way, and she's really just one of the kindest people I know, and she pours excellence into everything that she does, no matter what it is.
Thank you.
I pray this bless you today. I hope you got something from it, and I hope you all just have a fantastic day.